Hi, Shifties. We've got a quick update for you. The Shift podcast is taking a little break for the summer, but don't worry. We'll be back in the fall with all new episodes. In the meantime, we won't leave you hanging. What we'll do is be replaying some of our most popular episodes so you can catch the ones you missed or revisit your favorites. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the fall. The Shift is brought to you by Joy Metrics. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Hey, welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Shift podcast. I am so excited to launch this podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle, the Chief Clinical and Innovation Officer at SE Healthcare. We're a company that's laser focused on clinician well-being, and I do international consulting on nurse excellence. I was a magnet program director for many years, one of my most favorite roles I've ever had in nursing. In addition, I just want to let everyone know on this podcast that I cannot wait every single morning to hop out of bed, get my 2 feet on the ground, and go back at what I love. And what I love is the profession of nursing and making an impact. The intent of this podcast is really meant to be to keep everyone involved, keep people interested, and most importantly, to keep you inspired. I believe that healthcare sometimes can get kind of a rap that's not as positive, and this podcast is meant to shine a light on everything that's right in healthcare, especially in nursing. I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and I believe every nurse is a leader. I believe every industry should have a nurse. I also believe nurses make the impossible possible. So this podcast is dedicated to you, all the nurses out there, and it's also dedicated to people in the healthcare industry that recognize our important role as nurses and how we manage health and well-being. The other influence I believe nurses have, we have influence on technology, we have influence on the economy, and we also have influence on education and well-being across the globe. Now, here's why we came up with this name, The Shift. It's pretty interesting. Number one, it comes as no surprise that nurses work shifts, 8 hours, 12-hour shifts, weekend shift, night shift. But also, when you think about a shift, it's moving from one place to another. It's a change in tendency. It's a change in position. It's a change in how you think about something. So we want to highlight shifts in our guests' life that really have changed everything in nursing. So with that, it is my honor, privilege, and I am just so excited to have Dr. Deb Zimmermann as our very first guest on the Shift podcast. Dr. Zimmermann is the current president of AONL, the American Organization of Nurse Leaders, and she is also the chief executive officer for the Daisy Foundation. And with that, Deb, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, Andrea, thank you. I am truly honored to be your first guest, and I am passionate about our profession as you are, and this podcast is really extraordinary. Time to really talk about us as a profession, the difference that nurses make in raising up the health of our nation. And I just absolutely love the intent. And if we can give some advice or tips, I think that is absolutely fabulous.
If you could just expand a little bit, Deb, on your extraordinary career and highlight some of the shifts that have made a difference.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. As I said, nursing is my passion. I am the eldest of 4 children and the daughter of a registered nurse. So I knew from a young age that nursing was my calling. I regularly talked to my mom about her patients and the many specialties within the profession because I saw her shift. When I was a teenager, I remember reading, I think it was a 17 or a Glamour magazine, about Loretta Ford at the University of Colorado and how she was shifting the profession and creating a new role that we now call advanced practice and nurse practitioners. And I remember bringing the article to my mom and saying, this now is what I really would like to specialize in. And my mom and her colleagues and friends, they sat with me. We reviewed the many different schools that were out there. They decided, although they were all diploma grads, that I should go to a baccalaureate degree program because they saw that education was changing. And they also knew that I was interested in becoming a nurse practitioner. Now, I am one of four children, and my family could give me emotional support, but they could not give me financial support. And at the same time, the military was opening their military schools to women, and they also offered ROTC scholarships. So I was privileged to to obtain an ROTC scholarship, and my decision of where I was going to practice upon graduation was really made for me. And I thought, what a wonderful way to see the world. So I began my career, served in the military for 4 years, and it was really great experience, particularly from a leadership perspective. My goal, though, was still to become a nurse practitioner, and Loretta Ford had moved from the University of Colorado to the University of Rochester. So off after I finished my military service, went to the University of Rochester, studied, and became a nurse practitioner. But because I had worked in leadership and the military and really had a love for leadership as well as practice, I was able to merge both my leadership and my practice. And eventually, while I was working as a nurse practitioner, became a chief nursing officer in Rochester, New York. And again, I realized that I couldn't do both. So I needed to shift. And I became a chief nursing officer full time. And I also began to see the role of nursing in having an opportunity to shift policy. I was able to work on prescriptive authority for nurse practitioners. I helped to introduce a bill called the BSN in 10, which looked at raising up the education of nurses. And I also, developed the love as a nursing leader. I had the opportunity to shift again, and I was asked to serve on the Magnet Commission, and that was my exposure to Bonnie and Mark Barnes. I, at that time, was invited to move as a chief nursing officer to Virginia, and the nurses uh, in Virginia said that they recognized the need for feedback from those that mattered most, their patients, their families, and their colleagues, and they wanted to introduce the Daisy Award. Well, how could you say no when
Right.
but what I didn't understand is the impact of the Daisy Award. I actually thought that the recognition programs that the organization had were robust and fulfilled and recognized the work of nurses. But what I found is that the Daisy Award was that absolute tie from with the public and those that they served. It was a tie to purpose. So for a new nurse to be able to receive feedback on their individual care, it validated that they were making a difference, that they made the right career choice. For the more senior nurse, it helped them recognize that they still were making a difference, and it prevented sometimes that cynicism that you get with time. And I was able to see how a culture of gratitude really raised up and created a healthy work environment, created collaboration, enhanced teamwork, then learned about the research, which really demonstrated that meaningful recognition was so important for a healthy work environment. By then, I had met Bonnie and Mark Barnes. They invited me to join the board. And then about 5 years later, and about 3 years ago, they asked if I would join the organization and become the CEO. Again, a shift. And here I am today. I am very privileged to be the CEO of the Daisy Foundation. And because I realize that we as nurses have a professional responsibility to serve our profession and really look, from an organizational perspective and really help advance policy. That's why I became active in both the ANA and ANCC, served on the Magna Commission, and had the opportunity to serve on the AONL Board of Directors and now serve as their president.
Deb, oh my gosh. So you clearly are a master shifty because you have shifted so many times in your career.
I'm not sure if I'm master shifty, but certainly I think shifting in our profession is, what a wonderful profession we are, right?
Right.
That we are the largest of the professions. Virtually, we practice wherever people are, and the opportunity to really shift specialties, to shift our careers is amazing. There's really no other profession that has that kind of opportunity.
I agree with that. And that's what I so love about your story and love about my career. I have a very interesting career. I mean, truly, when I became the Professional Excellence and Magnet Program Director, I approached an incredible chief nursing officer, Dr. Marilyn Schaffner, who really was my mentor, and she took a leap of faith, and she was incredible. She is incredible. And we still connect to this day. It was the shift. And as you walk through all of your shifts, I want you to share with anybody who's listening, whether they're a new grad, they've been in the career, what does it take to make the shift? What does it take from a characteristic value perspective? What does it take to make a shift?
Well, I think first of all, you have to have an openness that we are part of a huge community, and we have the opportunity to network. We have the opportunity to mentor, to be mentors and be mentored. The opportunity to participate in continuing education, the opportunity to try new specialties. Yes, there is a leap of faith, and yes, there is understanding that failure can occur. But if you weigh the benefits versus the risk and the failure, almost always there is the benefit of taking that risk. And I've been, very fortunate that sometimes I didn't always feel ready. And sometimes we as nurses want to make sure everything is in absolute alignment before we take that risk. And sometimes that's not always possible, but I think the willingness to try something new, recognizing that if you fail, there are lots of opportunities to move in other directions within our profession.
I love that. And don't you feel like in nursing, and I've been in nursing for 30 years, I feel like there's always someone that has your back. There's always someone that's willing to say, let's take this risk, let's try it. And I really feel like that's a message that I want to share with people that are young into the profession, people that are considering the profession, that we are such, I love that you said network. Bonnie mentioned that you're such a networker. And I just think our profession affords so many opportunities because we do have the interest not only of the patients we serve, society that we serve, but each other. And I think we need to start continuing that shift that we support and help each other.
I have found that within our profession, there is such grace, compassion, and understanding for our colleagues, and that the greats within our profession see it as their duty to help the profession continue to grow, to help our newer nurses to be able to advance their career. There have been many advances, certainly that I've been able to see, in my career, whether it be scope of practice, the settings, compensation, a greater seat at the table, are all things that have occurred. And almost all of them occurred because there were other nurses who gave a helping hand to me and to others to help advance the profession. And why do nurses do that? It's really for the good of those that we serve, our patients and our community.
I agree with that. Deb, will you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with AONL right now? Like what's your laser focus for your, it's a year presidency, correct? So what is it, a 1 year term?
It's actually a 2-year term as president. So a few years ago, they made AONL looked at the need for more continuity within their board, and specifically within the president's role, because they wanted the opportunity for the president to be able to bring an agenda to fruition. So I have had the opportunity to serve as 2 years as president-elect, and then I have 2 years as president. So I am 6 months, or a little over 6 months, 7 months now into my presidency. So I'm thrilled that I have another year and a half. The absolute focus has been the workforce. And I think really every professional association in healthcare has been laser focused on workforce. And truly, one of AONL's strength, and something I embrace, is the role of AONL to serve as a convener. We don't necessarily have to know all the answers, but we need to bring people together in order that the voices of our clinicians who are on the front lines, as well as other disciplines and our community leaders and other professional nursing organizations, can really come together. So first and foremost, it was really creating that healthy work environment. What we know is that nurses were fatigued over the last 4 years, and that not all of the elements that are necessary for a healthy work environment were in place because of the command and control processes that were in place in order to combat the pandemic. So what we have really been focused on is really reinstating the elements of a healthy work environment that we know from the research, from both the magnet perspective as well as the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, in helping to support that, as well as looking at what do we need to do? What have we learned from the pandemic? What kinds of new models need to be put in place? What we saw is that there were gaps in our models of care, in our health system, where vulnerable populations really were very challenged. So how can we create models of care with the voice of the nurse from the front line that cross the continuum of care, that allow nurses to practice to their full scope of license, and then also give them the time, which is so important, to really build those relationships and engage. So that one, our focus is on models of care. Second, we're working on workplace violence. That is something that we really have not yet tackled. And I just attended the ANA Assembly and really spoke to the ENA. We've been talking to the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, the American Hospital Association. What can we do from a healthcare perspective and a community perspective to really address this? The second thing that we've been looking at is that we know that nurses really are looking for mentoring, coaching. They want to have a say in the work, and that means that their frontline leaders have to have the skill and really have to be able to spend the time with their teams to be able to provide that career coaching to them. So we have really been focused on that frontline leader, looking at their span of responsibility, or what we call span of control. How can we create that environment and support those nurses so that they can really create environments that are healthy right where it's needed most?
I love what you said, and you pretty much summed up all of the 6 evidence-based standards for the AACN for the healthy work environment. And I think you're right, it's authentic leadership. And
Right.
how can I just listen? How can I just step back and truly listen to what our nurses in the care delivery environment are saying? And then how can we mentor them? How can we coach them? How can we provide them opportunities to make a shift? And it doesn't mean we're shifting them out of the care delivery environment. It means maybe we're shifting them to go back and get a certification. Maybe we're shifting them to go back and get another degree. Maybe we're shifting them to join a professional organization. So I love how you said all that. And I love everything that AONL is doing. It's such an exciting time in nursing. And I hope people see it that way. And I think that's, again, going back to the intent of this podcast, is to just remind people and re-energize that there is so much great work going on right now in healthcare, specifically nursing. It's an exciting time to be a nurse. Do you agree with that?
Oh, without a doubt. We proved to the world, because it's not just nursing in the United States, worldwide, that we can step up and we can step out. Nursing went where other professions didn't necessarily go during the pandemic. And we have a history of, as a profession, of stepping up and stepping out during challenging times. It started with Florence Nightingale, where modern nursing was really created during times of war. And what we have already proven to society is the opportunity that we deserve a seat at the table, that nurses need to help with the redesign because we know what our communities really need. We as a profession now need to recognize that we have that power and really embrace our own power. I saw Tim Porter O'Grady last week in Chicago, and he said, nursing is the center of the earth. And it is time for us to really recognize that we need that. So we have to, as a profession, recognize that our work is that direct patient care, linking and providing that care with our community, but it also is understanding where healthcare should be and playing a role in the design of that healthcare and really ensuring that our voice is heard.
I agree with that. That's so well said. Our profession, we are just, nurses are just incredible. And I say this all the time. We do make the impossible possible. And I'm so proud to be a nurse. I'm so proud to be sitting here with you right now. And I forgot to say thank you for your service. I didn't want to interrupt you in the beginning, but thank you for your service. God bless America. But thank you for all that. So let's just kind of go back and forth. Let's talk about some nuggets that we can, whether you've been a nurse for 10 years, 10 weeks, 10 months, or you're thinking about nursing, what are some takeaways that we can share with everyone who's listening?
So when we talk about our joy, what is nursing's joy, and what is our purpose? Our joy is meaningful connections, and that is just as important as having the clinical skill to save a life, and the opportunity to really form those relationships with our patients, with our work colleagues, and with our community is just so important. And it's that is our joy. Nurses are not afraid of hard work. It's that we're able to have an impact. And that's what I've seen with Daisy. And that's why meaningful recognition is so important. But our joy is the ability to make a meaningful difference and to bring people together. So when in doubt, bring people together. That is our strength that no other profession is as good as us in nursing.
Bring people together as a takeaway. I'm going to share a quick story. You may have heard me tell this story. I do something with Sarah V. It's called Renew, Restoring Every Nurse Everywhere. And at the end, it's all about making these meaningful connections. And a long time ago, I was a neuroscience ICU nurse at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in Shadyside. And I was taking care of a gentleman who was 32 years old, and he presented to the emergency room with blurred vision. And a long story short, he was given a really bad diagnosis of a glioblastoma, and he had a wife, two small children, and I took care of him. He had a couple tumor debulkings, and at one point, toward his last hospital stay with us, he was trying to eat soup, and every time he'd put the utensil up to his mouth, the soup would keep going back into the bowl. And what he recognized is that he was trying to eat soup with a knife. And his wife came back in a couple weeks after he had passed away. And of course, they brought donuts and bagels and thanked us. And she pulled me aside and she said, Andrea, I really want to thank you. And I said, sure, you're so welcome. And she said, no, really. The last time I genuinely saw my husband smile, because we had two small children, we had a devastating prognosis. The last time I saw my husband smile is when you two were laughing because he was eating soup with a knife. And it's those little things that mean so much, and those little meaningful connections that are so important. So I think my message is take time, be present. It's so important to be present in that moment and recognize that how those little acts of kindness, those little acts of being present and being meaningful changes people's lives. And I think as nurses, we have the influence to change lives.
Without a doubt. And that's why so many times after a nurse receives a Daisy Award, they'll say, I didn't really do anything. But it's those meaningful connections, hearing and understanding that nursing that people appreciate and last well beyond the moment. And when we get that feedback, that it's those little things, it's those human connections, it really fills our cup too.
That's right. So, Deb, can we just make a shout out right now and ask all of our listeners, if you've never written a Daisy nomination, now's the time to write a Daisy nomination. So that's a takeaway. Write a Daisy nomination. I'm just going to throw a couple others out there. If you're not currently involved in AONL, ANA, maybe your specialty organization. I was a critical care nurse. I was an AACN member for a long time. I think that's a big takeaway to get involved, and that's a different type of shift that you can make.
Absolutely. And one other thing I want to bring about too, you know, together we're better. And we're over 4 million strong just here in the United States as a profession to listen to one another and to listen to opposing opinions and invite those opposing viewpoints to participate in the solution will create opportunities for better solutions. And it will in turn raise up the health and wellness of our community.
You know what I said, Deb, when I was the Professional Excellence and Magnet Program Director, shared governance was, underneath of me. And I love shared governance. And I always said shared governance was really a medium where we could really display diversity at its finest, because we sat there and hopefully embraced other people's thoughts, ideas. And that's when the magic happens, when we have the capacity to really pay attention and look at things differently from a different perspective.
Right. So then you hear the best solutions, and together you really can. And honestly, as a profession, we're good at that. But sometimes we're focused on getting the task done, and
Right.
and we don't have time to really listen to one another. And it's so important to listen to one another.
I agree. Well, Deb, I can't thank you. First of all, in 6 months, we would love to invite you back to the shift. So hopefully we'll hear more about what's going on with AONL, your models of care. You can get us inspired all over again. I just want to remind all the folks that are listening to us, and I'm going to start calling everybody shifties. Shifties, you have the ability to shift every single day, and your shift makes a difference.